Hi friends, my name is Lauren and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about my most disappointing reads of 2022. I already made a short video about this on TikTok and it got some decent traction. So I thought, why not make a YouTube video? It'll give me an excuse to film, get used to this camera setup still. Give me just more time to complain, honestly, because if there's one thing I love to do, it's to read books and then bitch about them. Before we get started, I just want to show off my new crew neck from Biblio Styles. It is inspired by one of my favorite books of the year, which is Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and it is hand embroidered Good Books, the fictional bookstore from the book, and I'm obsessed with it, but I'm not cool enough to have like an affiliate code for anything. So you should just go to their website if you want one. I know she does restocks once a month or something like that. The quality is amazing. I wear this all the time. I live in it. I eat with it. I sleep with it. And I just hope I don't get a stain on it because that tends to be something that I do a lot. The first book I'm going to talk about had some girls mad in my comment section because it is the worst book I think I've ever read in my entire life, in writing and in execution and just overall enjoyment, and it is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Now, I know people love this woman, they love her books, they read everything for her, they are her ride or die, and I just gotta say that will never ever be me. If you catch me reading another Colleen Hoover book, you need to call the authorities and ask for a welfare check. I don't want to shit on anyone who loves to read her books. They are just not for me. I specifically said I did not like this book. I thought it was dog water out of 10, which is the lowest of the low. I said girls under the age of 18 have no business reading this book or any of Colleen Hoover's books because I feel like they are manipulative and harmful, especially to young, impressionable girls who have no idea what the contents are of Colleen's books because they are marketed as romances, and Miss Colleen has a certain view on content warnings that I disagree with. I read It Ends With Us with a neighborhood book club that I'm in, and we all collectively thought, what the fuck, the whole time while we were reading it. I understand what Colleen was trying to do. I know she draws from personal experiences with her mother and the relationship that she was in. I just think she absolutely failed in its execution. I felt like It Ends With Us often romanticized the abuse in her relationship with Ryle. There was kind of like the happy ending really threw me for a loop. It made me want to throw my book against the wall, and I just there was something about it where I just felt like Colleen Hoover purposely manipulates her audience to catch them off guard, get that visceral reaction. So she succeeds at that. I don't think I can forgive her for like the execution of that book, which is why I believe I could go on about this for days. I hated it. I hated it. I rarely say I hate books and give them 1 star. I genuinely, in my bones, hated this book. This next book was not only a disappointment to me, but I know a disappointment to a lot of readers, and it is Book of Night by Holly Black. I have not read Holly's Cruel Prince series, so I cannot speak to her craft and her writing style in that series. I just have to say that I thought Book of Night was the most dry and dull book I think I have ever read in terms of prose and style and execution. The marketing behind Book of Night and all of the special editions from book boxes no doubt made it one of the biggest releases of the year in fantasy. To me, it was like the biggest flop ever. I think this book got like 9 special editions, which is absolutely insanity. I feel like I could make a whole separate video on the special editionification of books because, quite frankly, I think it's gotten out of hand. Regardless, for a book that sucked, why does it have 9 editions? In Book of Night, we're following our main character, Charlie, and she lives in the modern world. There is shadow magic and people deal in shadows where somebody can lose their shadow or you can buy shadows. You can have shadows be manipulated and they can do things for you. And it's a really cool concept because in this world, something called the Liber Noctum goes missing, aka the Book of Night, and it's up to Charlie to get it back because she used to be a thief and work in the shadows, but now she doesn't do that anymore and she lives with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend's just really freaking weird and he doesn't have a shadow and everyone's just like sus of that. So it all sounds really cool, right? Like, who doesn't love a morally gray character? Who doesn't love shadow magic? Who doesn't? And that's all to say, I think this book really failed in execution. I thought the writing, like I said earlier, was very dry and dull, and there was just like nothing to the prose. It was very plain, I guess what I want to say. Like, there was just I feel like I'm gonna make like a food analogy right here, but it was just like, if you've got like a plain, you got a cheeseburger where it's just like you got your plain bun, you got your patty, you got your cheese, and you got your top bun. Like, that's what Book of Night felt like. Like, where was the tomato? Where was the lettuce? Where was the bacon? Where was the aioli? Where was the fried egg on top? I don't know. There was just, it was giving nothing. Nothing. The main reason I really disliked Book of Night is because we had this promise of Morley Gray characters, shadow magic, all of this really cool stuff. And then what we got was nothing like what we promised. I think everything just fell short. I felt like the characters were one-sided. I thought the mystery was relatively easy to solve. The book was only 300 pages, but it felt like it just dragged along. There was a lot of characters whose names were only mentioned once, and it just felt like they were just named to be named, and I don't think I would have finished it if the Fantasy and Friends Book Club hadn't read it earlier this year. Book of Night is not going to be a book for everyone. It definitely was not for me. I don't think I'll be checking out the sequel when it comes out because I think it's supposed to be a duology. I think I still will check out Holly Black's Cruel Print series because I know people love Jude and Carden and the politics of that series. I think it could be a lot of fun. But yeah, Book of Night was just not it. The Stardust Thief follows our main character, Luli Al-Nazari, who is also known as the Midnight Merchant, who's a criminal slash smuggler with the help of her djinn bodyguard, hunts and sells an illegal magic. When she's in the market one day doing her job, she comes to save the life of the prince. She has come to save the life of the prince, which inevitably draws the attention of his father, the Sultan, and he blackmails her into going on a quest to find an ancient lamp that can revive their barren lands. But the cost of it is sacrificing all of the djinn, which Luli doesn't want to do because her djinn bodyguard is her BFF. First up, the pros. I thought this book started off so strong. Started off with a bang, really fast paced. I loved where we were going, especially when Luli and her bodyguard started going on the quest. I also loved reading about the Arab-inspired setting. I thought it was really lush and rich. I loved reading about how Luli takes in her world through, like, I loved reading about the descriptions of food and aromas and products for sale within the market and how Luli's job as the Midnight Merchant worked. What led to this book being really disappointing to me is honestly the writing style. Because the prose and the writing style was so simple, I often felt like the story lacked a lot of depth. It felt like the whole book was lacking a layer of complexity I have come to expect from adult fantasy. When I read adult fantasy, I don't expect every novel to have the complexity and the depth, say, of Lord of the Rings. That's a lot. I'm gonna get shit for this, but when I was reading The Stardust Thief, I kept thinking that this book belonged in the YA section. Now, I'm not saying that all young adult fantasies are simple. They're not. Now, I've read tons of YA fantasy novels that have layers upon layers of complexity and depth, but there was just something about The Stardust Thief that just left me wanting more. The last book I'm going to talk about is one that should not be a surprise because I've talked about it a little bit on my TikTok, and it is Lark by Alex Astor. This lands on this list because I DNF'd it. It was one of my few DNFs this year. I'm not afraid to DNF, but when I do, I mean it. Oh god, what to say about Lark? Aside from the controversy that surrounded this book prior to publication, I wanted to read and find out for myself, you know? Like, is what reviewers are saying true? Is it really bad? Is it really good? I just wanted to read and find out and form my own opinion, as a good reviewer does. I think this book's biggest downfall was Alex Astor's writing style itself. And you're probably thinking, Zoran, of course it would be a downfall if you didn't like the book. Bear with me, okay? I'm gonna make sense soon. After finishing the first chapter of Lark, I knew the book wasn't gonna be for me. And that's fine. Not all young adult fantasy appeals to me as I get older. I'm 24 now and I tend to be a little picky with my YA. I thought Astor's writing was simple and direct, which is all well and good, but if you can't even make sense of your world in the simplest of terms to your audience who is 13 to 18 years old, that's not good writing. That needs to be reworked and revised because you as the author can't be the only one who knows what's going on. I have read so much fantasy in the last few years that I am totally fine with being thrown into the world of a new fantasy book to figure out the world building on my own. I'm fine with being intentionally confused. There was just something about this book where I could not get it through my skull for how the world worked. Just this island that randomly showed up every 100 years and then these rulers just congregate here and they decide to do this competition. I don't even remember the freaking plot. That's how much I disliked it. And they're not allowed to kill each other. Then why would you describe it like the Hunger Games? If they can't kill each other after some arbitrary amount of days. Make it make sense. I started thinking, if story's simple, why so confused? And I remember I sat down and I was taking notes as I was reading, but I was genuinely like, asking questions that you should be able to answer within a fantasy world. And I realized the more questions I was asking myself, the more the world in the book fell apart for me. And that's when I knew. I don't even think it was a case of the book not being for me, but I just thought this book genuinely was just, to me, bad. And I asked, what are the stakes? And I thought about it and I was like, oh my God, there are none. And we are supposed to be in a Hunger Games-esque style of fantasy book. And I think that's just one of the most simplest questions you should be able to answer for yourself as an author. It's on my opinion, like in fantasy or sci-fi books, that if you're going to introduce a set of rules or a way of living or literally anything you're making up for your fantasy world, you need to back that up with evidence. And I just felt like Aster failed at that aspect a lot. It felt like she didn't have a lot of answers to her own questions. That is my rant on Lark. It's just another book that I could just bitch and bitch and bitch about, because from a craft standpoint, I think it's just... it's really rough, okay? If you loved any of these books, I just want to say that I love that for you. We are all entitled to our own opinions. These are just mine. You can take it or leave it, but don't be a hater just because I am. Don't hate me because... Girl, what? I guess I'm just saying be nice. Or Ray will do her little growly bites. I guess that wraps up my most disappointing reads of 2022. This was a lot of fun to make. I feel like I'm still getting in the hang of being on YouTube, you know? I can't believe there's already over 300 subscribers. That really made me shit my pants a little bit, not gonna lie. But I enjoy making content cross-platform, whether it be on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube now, and working on stuff for my book club, Fantasy and Friends, and our Discord. And I have got some really cool plans for 2023 in the works right now. If you've made it to the end of the video, I guess I'll tell you that I'm planning to launch a Patreon in 2023. It's something I've thought about doing for, honestly, since the beginning of this year. And it's just something I feel like I finally have the courage and the audience to do now, because the way the Fantasy and Friends community has uplifted and supported me this year has made me happy and grateful in a way that I didn't know was possible. So a Patreon is coming, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more content, drop some video ideas down below. I will be filming my 2022 favorites very soon, probably after Christmas. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a happy holiday wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, friends!